I'd like to thank the faculty, the administration, the trustees for inviting me here today. And I'd like to thank the graduates and their guests for their attention to this address. Now, Grove City College graduates of 2022, let me start by congratulating you on your achievement. I know that the years of work, study, sacrifice, and dedication have earned you this day, and I'm very proud of you for your accomplishments. I know from firsthand experience how hard it is to earn a degree from Grove City College. Now, to the family members and friends who are in attendance today, I'm sure you share in the pride and excitement of this day, and likely for a good reason. Most of these graduates would not be here without the support, love, and encouragement from people like you. You should share in the pride and satisfaction that accompanies the degree from Grove City College. I was honored to be asked to give this address today. I owe so much to this college. I met my wife here, Heidi, and she has so much to do with what I've done the last few decades to result in this invitation, so thank you, Heidi. Now, the title of my talk is Leave Things Better Than You Found Them. And the concept of leaving things better than you found them was introduced to my brother and me by our mother. Now, although she was actually referring to her kitchen as a thing we need to leave better, this is a real simple concept. And what started as probably a plea to put the milk away and put our dishes in the dishwasher has culminated here in this address today. I know that many of you will leave this place better than when you arrive. I've had the opportunity to learn about some of the many service projects that GCC students and faculty have been involved with, from the Calderwood School of Arts and Letters departments of management and marketing, entrepreneurship, education, communication, and design. They've all led students in several service learning projects that have left Grove City and the surrounding community a better place. Now, being a mechanical engineering major, I have to mention Engineers with a Mission organization. Students like April Huffman and Highsway Rosario have worked to design processes to recycle plastics and develop an off-grid aquaponic greenhouse for underserved communities. These projects have left things better. So today I'm going to speak about 5 concepts that I believe will help you leave things better than you found them. And the first is this: a little can be a lot. I got to say, when I was asked to be here, I was surprised. This is an address that's typically given by a public personality, authors, political figures, celebrities. They're usually standing in this spot right now, not a surgeon. The typical commencement speaker has a wide appeal and holds a position in society that impacts people en masse. It certainly doesn't seem like me, someone who regularly comes home with blood on my socks after a day in the operating room. Now, I try to reassure my wife that it isn't my blood, but it doesn't seem to make it any better. I'm certainly not a master orator like Reese or Dr. Messer, who gave wonderful talks already. In fact, orthopedic surgeons have the reputation of being as strong as an ox and almost as smart. I'm just one person, and I can only do surgery on one patient at a time. My impact to the world is limited to one person at a time. But I think I was asked to speak to you today because my experience and my opportunities to make the world a better place will be much more similar to the opportunity that many of you graduates will have. While I don't reach large numbers of people with my ideas or services, I hopefully impact their lives in a much deeper manner. In the end, the overall net impact on society may be the same. Most of you will have the opportunity to matter to a fewer number of people, but in a more profound way. And your impact will be local, mattering to the people around you. I want to tell you a story about a patient I treated about 15 years ago. This is a gentleman who was in his mid-30s, and he has a diagnosis of osteogenesis imperfecta, a disease commonly referred to as brittle bone disease. It's usually encountered in children who sustain multiple fractures from low-energy trauma. In adulthood, patients with osteogenesis imperfecta have fewer fractures, but they're often left with significant dysfunction and disability due to deformities that occurred from their fractures in their childhood. I treat many patients with osteogenesis imperfecta, many of whom are wheelchair-bound as adults. Now, this patient was small. He was close to 4 foot tall, and he was basically wheelchair-bound because of his lower limb deformities. He had been able to transfer from a wheelchair to his bed or to a toilet, pivoting on his legs. He didn't really walk. that just kind of stood up and slid over to the chair. This small amount of use of his legs ended up causing an insufficiency fracture in his hip. Now, insufficiency fractures are similar to stress fractures. They occur when a relatively small amount of force is applied over and over and over to a bone, resulting in fatigue failure. Now, I learned all about fatigue failure my junior year during my materials of engineering class here at Grove City. This patient's fracture was located in the neck of his femur, which is a very unfavorable place to have a fracture. Now, due to the anatomy of the upper femur, the femoral neck is located in compression on one side and tension on the other. And when a fracture occurs, there's a shearing along a vertical fracture line. This content was covered in Mechanics 101, sophomore year over in Hoyt Hall. Now, this fracture caused this patient to be unable to stand so we could transfer to the bathroom or bed or desk. Now, he'd previously seen two other surgeons who both recommended just remove the head of the femur, take the hip out, leaving him without a hip joint, because his small bones were not amenable to reconstruction or fixation. It's possible that treatment may have allowed him to stand again, but he certainly would have lost some function. And since he was already just barely able to move, removing his hip may have resulted in him being permanently wheelchair-bound and unable to transfer. Now, in a patient with normal-sized bone and function, the treatment normally would be to realign the hip. We would cut a wedge of bone out, convert that shearing force into compression, and fix it in that position. So I suggested we try this procedure. We did it, and 3 months later, he returned to my clinic. X-rays looked good, looks like the bone had healed. He got up, transferred from his wheelchair to the examining table. I didn't really think anything of it. I mean, patients come in, get onto the examining table all the time in my clinic. But this was a huge moment for him. He had regained his independence. And the ability to do what seems like a simple movement to most people here means he can continue living on his own, holding his job, driving a car. He's not going to require his 70-ish-year-old parents to bring him back into their house and take care of him. Objectively, this whole episode of treatment gave him very little function. The patient can stand up on his leg for a few seconds and pivot. And it really would not be considered a big deal to almost anyone in this audience. But it turns out that when you have a little means a lot. And to this patient, it was life-changing. Your impact on the world does not have to be achieved in giant actions or massive accomplishments. Take the situation that is presented to you, make it better in any way you can, large or small, and you may have a profound impact on others around you. Okay, my second concept is this: collaboration. Both collaborating with others as well as the collaboration of your faith and experience is exponentially powerful. Well, many of you have probably heard of the Mayo Clinic. You may not be familiar with its beginnings or why it is so well known. In 1863, Abraham Lincoln appointed William Worrell Mayo to the position of examining surgeon for the United States Army and moved him from western Minnesota to Rochester, located in the southeast part of the state, where the Army Enrollment Board was located. Following the war, he stayed and set up his medical practice, raised a family, and his two sons, William and Charles, went to medical school, then returned to Rochester to assume their father's medical practice. On August 21st, 1883, a tornado flattened the town of Rochester, population 5,000 at the time, killing 24 and injuring hundreds. In the immediate aftermath of the tornado, the Sisters of St. Francis teamed up with the Mayo brothers to care for the injured. In the course of rebuilding the town, an agreement was struck wherein the sisters would raise the money to build a hospital if the Mayo brothers would provide the medical staff. The hospital was completed in 1889 with 27 beds. The Mayo brothers subsequently brought multiple specialists together under the same roof to collaborate. One of the first medical facilities to truly provide integrated care across specialties. A novel medical record system was designed that allowed multiple physicians to participate in the care of patients. This medical record system promoted a team approach to patient care that is still utilized to this day, and collaboration between physicians is facilitated in many ways. Okay, for example, the Mayo Clinic calendar, my working calendar, is assigned a different color every other day, blue or orange. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, one week would be blue, the next week, Tuesday, Thursday would be blue, and the other days would be orange. I am an orange surgeon. I operate on all the orange days. I always operate on the same day as the other orange surgeons, the same orange hand surgeon, vascular surgeon, plastic surgeons, same general surgeons. This system facilitates cooperation and collaboration and now allows the implementation of the Mayo Brothers mantra, which is the needs of the patient come first. And this ability to collaborate fosters the culture of accountability, each physician holding the others to the highest standards. The combination of the religious principles of the Sisters of St. Francis with the medical innovation of the Mayo Brothers resulted in efficient and effective medical practices benefiting all our patients. You, Grove City College graduates here today, will bring a combination of faith principles and professional excellence to your chosen profession, positioning you to change the world like the Mayo Brothers. All right, my third concept is this: be willing to change your opinion as new information is learned. The last 2 years have been exciting ones to work in the field of healthcare. The last 2 years have allowed us to get an upfront look at the process of science. We've seen this process moving at a rate we've never seen before. Because of the large volume of COVID infections throughout the world, we've been able to collect a massive amount of data in a relatively short time. This has resulted in rapid changes in recommendations for prevention, treatment of this disease. Now, to give you an idea for the normal process of scientific research and data collection, when I started practice at the Mayo Clinic, standard treatment for someone who would break their tibia, the bone between your knee and your ankle, was to make an incision next to your kneecap, your patellar tendon, move it to the side, and put a metal rod inside the tibia. Now, someone had the idea to use a different location to insert the device, where you make an incision above the kneecap and pull it forward and put the rod in. This has now become the standard in my practice, as data has shown that knee function is similar, while the fracture alignment is better and the surgical times are decreased with this newer technique. Now, the surgeon who started doing this had good anecdotal outcomes, but anecdotes are susceptible to fallacy. Data is the plural of anecdote. Data matters. It took 12 years collecting data to obtain enough cases and information to determine this difference. Turns out that people are just not breaking their legs fast enough to collect data any faster. Now, be careful nonetheless. Be careful on your motorcycles, and please wear your seatbelts. We actually don't need any help answering this question anymore, so just move on. I've been involved with several prospective randomized trials, which are considered the gold standard of clinical evidence. These trials enroll patients and randomly assign them to one treatment group or another. The largest trial I ever was involved with was published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2019, studying hip fractures. We started planning this trial in 2005. It enrolled nearly 1,500 patients with hip fractures. It took 8 years to complete enrollment. Recently, the same journal published a randomized controlled trial related to COVID-19 treatment that enrolled more than twice as many patients in just 5 months. The incredible volume of disease related to COVID has allowed researchers to ask and answer questions at an unprecedented rate. It has been exciting to watch the medical field's ability to capture so much data in a quick time, attributable to the unfortunate widespread nature of COVID-19. But they've made rapid recommendations for treatment and prevention. Treatment recommendations are based on the best available data at that time. So whenever a change in recommendation is encountered, it should be accompanied with satisfaction and pleasure, knowing this represents an advancement of our knowledge of the subject. This is science in action. It's exciting to see it happen. However, learning new information is useless unless we're willing to consider changing our opinions. In the field of medicine, people who are unwilling to change their opinions or practice based on new information make themselves into relics and lose their effectiveness. Learning new information and changing the way we do something is not an admission of being wrong or having made a mistake. It's rather a sign of maturity, demonstrating wisdom and insight. I encourage the graduates here to consider their opinions and perspective in the light of new information, data, practices, and be open to change. All right, fourth concept, so we're 60% done. Do the right thing. You know what it is. When I arrived on campus in the summer of 1991 for football camp, 2 weeks prior to the rest of the students arriving and classes beginning, I had little idea how to balance the independence of being at college with the requirements of being a student athlete. I had to figure that out very quickly. One piece of advice that I received was from our football coach at the time, Coach Chris Smith. It was the night before our first game. And we had dinner, and then we went down to the field house, and we had a meeting there. And I expected he was going to give us all his direction on what to do that night, a list of rules and instructions. Get to bed early, stay well hydrated, don't max out the interviz, something like that. Instead, as we're leaving, all he said to us was this: do the right thing, you know what it is. And I realized, I'm the only one responsible for my actions. This seems like really, really, really common sense. But someone just out of high school, it never really connected to me at that point. I know. Since then, I was not a perfect student athlete. I was not a perfect medical student or perfect resident. I'm not a perfect surgeon. And most of the times that I've gotten in trouble, I could have been avoided by following his advice. I knew the right thing to do, and I didn't do it. Maybe it was too hard, too awkward, too uncomfortable. But I knew what was right. And now, when I follow this advice, things seem to work out well. I expect all the graduates here should know the right thing after 4 years, so do it. And while this pandemic has brought out the best in some people, it's also exposed some really bad behaviors. People refuse to take basic steps to help protect other people, sometimes in the name of liberty and freedoms. Within the span of a few minutes last year, I saw the opposite ends of the spectrum as I witnessed my own colleague, my friend and partner, who himself was immunosuppressed, having just recovered from a bone marrow transplant, operate on a known COVID-positive patient to reconstruct their shattered leg. While down the hall, a patient and family argued with the nursing staff because they refused to wear a mask because of their individual liberty to protect others. While the ability to express our liberty is highly valued, the need to do so should be tempered with the consideration of the vulnerable. I hope that people here today would consider that selflessness and caring for others is a priority for Grove City College graduates. That is the right thing. And final, point 5 is this: run your own race and control the things you can control. I want to take a few minutes to address the graduates who will be attending graduate school next year. Getting an advanced degree can be a very competitive experience. There may be a lot of posturing and intimidation tactics used by your fellow students. I know from experience in the medical field that performing well in medical school was mandatory in order to obtain the residency position in a highly competitive specialty, and the other students knew this as well. In the first week of medical school, we were randomly split into groups of 6 to perform cadaver dissections as we began learning about anatomy. I was grouped with a few other students who attended nationally well-known universities, prestigious universities. Some of them had never even heard of Grove City College. While huddled over our cadaver, the corpse of an 80-plus-year-old woman, they explained to me the competitive and rigorous nature of their schooling and how supremely they were prepared for what we were doing. We spent the next 6 weeks dissecting that cadaver into pieces of bone and tissue no larger than a tater tot, identifying every vessel and nerve, lymph node and ligament. Now, to quote my father, these guys had a lot of degrees, but no heat. I was fortunate to perform well enough in medical school to secure a residency in orthopedic surgery, which is one of the most competitive specialties in medicine. And I don't know where those other students are at this time, but I know where I am. You will likely meet students like this in your graduate program. They will try to intimidate you, or at least make sure you know that they spend a lot of money on their degree to be sitting in a classroom beside you. I want to reinforce to you, you are the ones that are supremely prepared to succeed in graduate school. You have a degree that requires you to learn, not just recite information. Your degree was earned through the process of mastering the material, not memorizing facts. There were no grades at Grove City College awarded for simply showing up. You are ready for this and have the foundation to dominate your graduate programs. Now, Grove City College has an outstanding success with students in graduate school and also with competitive swimming. And I was not involved in the swim program here, but graduate school is somewhat analogous to the 50-meter freestyle. You jump in the pool, you put your head down, and you kick and paddle as fast and hard as you can until you reach the end. It doesn't matter what your competitor's strategy is, how fancy their swimsuit is, or what they say to you before the race. You just do your own thing as hard as you can. Focus and run your own race, and you will complete the program and meet with success. And for those of you who are graduating and maybe entering the workforce, you may find that in your job, there are many things you simply cannot control. A teacher may work on a lesson plan for hours yet students can't master the material. A marketing executive may polish a presentation for weeks, yet not get the account. A salesman may offer the best prices and services, yet the client chooses to purchase from a competitor. Failure is not always the result of a lack of effort and preparation. And there will be times in your lives when you have done everything possible to ensure a successful outcome, yet fail. I've experienced this in my own practice. I did the right surgery for the right indication, using the right preoperative medications and treatments, but the patient developed an infection, or the bone didn't heal, or they got a blood clot, or they died. In the case of failure, we always carefully review the circumstances. God doesn't waste our experiences. And every month at the Mayo Clinic, we hold a morbidity and mortality conference where the cases with poor outcomes are critically evaluated, asking what could be done better or differently. The case is presented, and my colleagues critically review the entire medical record. Tough questions are asked. I have to answer them. When we find something that could have been done differently, we implement process changes to make sure it never happens that way again. However, sometimes we find that nothing could be done to prevent a situation. We used the best technology, the diagnosis was correct, the plan was appropriate, the surgical execution was perfect. Yet, things turned out badly. Something like this will happen to you. Look very critically at your performance and decisions, but when it's truly an unpreventable failure, take control of the one thing you can control 100% of the time, which is your attitude and reaction to failure. I'm not saying you have to cheer up and move on. It's appropriate to lament the failure and experience sadness, but actively try to control your words and emotions, particularly around coworkers and team members that may look up to you. A positive attitude can be controlled, and it has the ability to rally the people around you. In a world where we are constantly looking for things we can control, our attitude is the one thing you have complete control over. I encourage you to exert that control to your benefit and the benefit of others around you. All right, that was point number 5. I will leave you with this closing thought. As you leave today, you're going to begin a new phase of life and start new habits and make your life what you want it to be. I know for a fact you can get anywhere from here. Remember, small things can mean a lot. Look for opportunities to collaborate and combine your skills with your faith principles. Be open to change with new information. Do the right thing and control what you can. Don't get distracted by what you can't. And make sure whatever you do, wherever you go, you leave that place better off than when you arrived. Thank you.